Shalom, beloveds, dear ones in community. It is quite a delight to see you this night, to join with you in wild and crazy explorations of Yohanan the Baptist. It is true. When you're talking about Yohanan, well, things tend to get a little bit wild. It is good. It removes us from ourselves, lets us dissolve away into the infinite, eternal, egos melting, and at some point arising in a great transformation. Let it be so. And so let us take up an invocation and a prayer. Holding in yourselves the expanse of the Most High in all directionality, in your heart center, see and know the fullness of your being without end. And so, as we chant and invoke, see this myriad of powers, forces, raying out from within you, all around you, through all infinite space and time, and beyond, in the eternal. Yahweh, 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 May the sacred circle be manifest through all realms and worlds of sentient existence, a great ingathering of the truth and the remembrance that sets free, an encompassing of Mashiach, Yoshua, Kala, dancing in the people's hearts and arising in the truth that has been spoken since the very beginning and beyond, in purity, in oneness, and in deep union. May the expanse of Mashiach ray out to encompass with the great wings of the Shekinah, like unto an eagle, drawing all in ascent. Amen and amen. So, we come to a peculiar section in our study. As we go along in this gospel, in this revelation, I am continuously reminded of how beautifully it, piece by piece by piece by piece, elucidates our lineage in a very vast way. And so here we come into this message first, our first little portion about the art of gesture. How that plays out through prophetic prayer. Which we want to draw this really close and home, because this can be something we can put outside of ourselves. Oh, I don't know what this gesture or that gesture or this gesture or all of these gestures mean. Of course, and mental thought and thinking, we do that. But I want to speak this first and foremost. This is calling us to abandon thought and thinking, because we're not going to ever fully fulfill or take up gestures from thought and thinking. It doesn't work. Because what this teaching is really encompassing is how to align one's body, your full material existence, from your head to your toes. I know. Talks a lot about hands here, but we want to extend it into how your physical body moves in the presence. And of course, okay, well, we can talk about, there will be this conscious intention in a sacred ceremony where we literally take up certain gestures, ideas of hand, cupping hand, hands like this whole, yes, in fact, there's very deep teachings in lineage that go into rather wild hand movements. Movements of the Shema, where the Shema would be spoken and prayed, where we hold these gestures. Brow, heart, navel. Yes. But these are deeply known in the soul. And in fact, I would propose they would manifest different for everybody. We might witness certain movements of gesture with a Holy Zadik. If we were going to go repeat the exact gesture the way we're witnessing, it would have no power. Because we're talking about encompassing the fullness of your body into your prayers, into your worship. And what about hands here? I mean, that's pretty fast. I could not help but think of Moses and the entire saga of the plagues that eventually lead to the Israelites being set free, and how many times in that story it talks about, and the hand of the Lord, of Yahweh or Elohim, was over them. And it talks about eventually later in the plagues, the word of the Lord comes to Moshe saying, you outstretch your hand and speak this prophecy. What is that? At one time, it's the hand of the Lord. Next, it's a clear instruction for you, Moshe, hold your hand out. And this movement of freedom. The hand of the Lord and the hand of the prophet start to get a little bit wishy-washy as to whose hand is whose. That becomes the real point of true gesture, of literally walking in that power and truth with the hand of the Lord, the hand of Yahweh. But we must trust that in ourselves. And as it can and is spoken in the teachings, well, one starts to walk in a way where literally it can be said that not one gesture, not one movement with Holy Zadakim is done in ignorance or forgetfulness. But that the Holy Zadakim walk with every gesture being intentional. That's quite a beautiful speaking, actually, if we really be with it. Because, wow, saying there's power in our movements. There's power in the way we walk. There's power in the way we talk. Move our bodies. We know this. It could go both ways. Power, empowering, and sometimes disempowering. So, what a conversation here. Truly. Calling us to be in our body. And not confuse the physical body with the body of light. And incorporate the body of light into the physical body. Go figure that. Very curious. And so then next, our little tiny portion following is very beautiful. And it's actually a nuclear little section that, well, God willing, we'll tap into. And if we don't this night, we might want to circle back into it, actually. We'll see. Because it's a really key teaching of the one way and the many ways. The reason it's key is because it draws out this beautiful mystery that there are ways in the spiritual path through which we are called. And particularly, we each probably have a resonance to various degrees with these ways. And they are literally spoken of as the way of knowledge, the way of power, the way of love and devotion, and the way of action and works. And quite literally, in our experience here, we are probably going to resonate with one of those ways, profoundly so. Now, it doesn't mean that through the journey we might not venture in to different ways. That's kind of a given. But we will always have this way that comes so powerfully to us naturally. You know, and we can consider them as way of knowledge. Deep study, contemplation, we are just consumed in scripture, and that is our thing. Scripture, deep mysteries, in study, contemplation, and leading to knowledge, obviously so. Kind of the way of the prophet. Way of power, everything is theurgic to us. We walk in this theurgic presence. We literally move and have our being in a wakefulness and awareness of power, theurgy, movements of the Lord, and that's all we're about, in a sense. Love and devotion, we found our way through love. Loving on beings. Deeply loving beings. And our way might not be in love and devotion. You probably don't have a set of magical prayer weapons, or maybe you do. Who's to say? You probably spend a lot of your time praying for others. Deeply praying. That's your passion, your drive, love, devotion, and love for the beloved. You can't get enough. Action works. that often is someone who has this talent of diving deep in the material world. And in the material world, God provides, and the fullness of their spirituality is provided in what is happening. And they often become huge supporters of Continuum, really big supporters. Their way is working with the people in the trenches, down and dirty, and everything they're doing. Their robes are getting dirty. I'm saying, like, it's work, action. And so there are these ways. And I have personally found this extremely liberating in the path, because, you know, I can, for example, and we all can in different ways, I can look at my holy Zadig, our holy Zadig Tamalakai, and go, oh, who very much carries way of power, way of knowledge. Oh, very much. You see a kind of mixture there. It's like, oh, that's that. I don't know. I mean, coming into that, you know, can be a little slightly intimidating. But when reminded that, well, you might have some other ways of working, love, devotion, diving into the ways of work, these things, it does certainly offer some liberation from the unfounded preconceptions that we think is what encompasses what it might look like. Because for every single soul coming into being, it's going to look very different. In fact, as we know, God never repeats God's self. So literally, each soul is going to have a really profound manifestation lending towards one of these, and probably a combination of multiple, and the configuration of how that looks. We're talking about 4. No, we want to expand that. As we've said recently, any numbers that we attribute to, you know, we put to manifestations of certain things here, we want to know that really it's an arbitrary number and there is this infinite expanse. So you could imagine an infinite expanse of those combinations too, of how souls might be in the spiritual journey. And it's so beautiful because it actually rays out through the entire tree of life as though souls and their way and resonance encompasses this vast expanse of how creator and creation come to be as one. God and God's name as one. Which that's most peculiar, because that is actually what gets pronounced in the Holy Shema, that has this most wild gesture associated with it, at least from what I've heard. That one will be with and pronounce. Shema Israel, Yo Eloheinu, Yo Yahweh, God. The Lord, one. I will leave it there as far as the speaking from this mouth, words, and ask, how are you moved? How does this speak to you? What does it stir?
I saw that, especially this first part, it's not just incorporating movement into worship, but it's a way to incorporate worship into movement. By that, when I realized that was doing what I do, I make probably 600 to 800 buns a week, and I touch every single one of them with my hands. And it's very methodical, but also gives me a lot of time to contemplate and chant and things like that. But now I can see it as my hands, laying on hands for each one of these, and it just became more powerful, and it's quite wonderful, and it's very unique in my circumstance, and it's a blessing that's unique to me.
Oh, brother, that is so lovely. Because what you have been shown in the Spirit is how to incorporate your deep call spiritually, passionately into everything you're doing. I get a sense the making of these buns is quite it can be turned into the most beautiful meditation, and pouring the light power as you're speaking, the laying on of hands into these. In fact, I think here there's this conversation, or it might come up here. I was looking into some of Tom Malachi's writings on the hands of God today, but the idea of hands of fire and light, and so kneading this in as you're working and focusing. What a meditation. What a beauty and delight. Yes. Yes. So, in everything we're doing. And it gets interesting. Now you're kind of getting, from what you're bringing up, there's this little sense of, in the second portion, would this be considered the way of work and action or power? I'm not sure. Or love. I'm not sure. Because it's directly related to a physical movement and talisman. I mean, people are eating these. Ooh. That's beautiful. It's directly woven into a talisman that could be a myriad of these. How beautiful.
And it's not just one specific person. I have no idea who's going to end up eating these buns. No.
No.
Shalom, Tal Sarah. I'm also really loving this. I have to admit that after decades, I took your advice and I read Revelation, and I found it totally overwhelming. And there was a point where I said, "This is too much for me. It's just too much for me, right?" And And I thought, you know what? I need to go back. I need to go back to the beginning. I need to go back to my basics here. And my basics are my love of the Masya. And my basic is also my love of Guadalupe, the mother coming through as Guadalupe. She's very present with me much of the time. I pray to her a lot. And it was like, that's okay. That's okay. It's okay that maybe I can't quite grok, that everything that goes on in Revelation is just overwhelming. I can't absorb it. It's too much. It's too much at this point anyway. And it's okay to simply remember, kind of like when I was a child, I just simply loved Jesus. If you get my drift. And, and now, I just have such a love for the presence of Guadalupe, the presence of the mother, and go back to that and just be there. Just be there. That's okay. So I'm appreciating what you're saying about there are many ways, right? And want to share that with you today.
So, dear sister, and you reached out. I did receive your email. There will be a response there.
Don't worry.
No, I want to share that. You're sharing. And in fact, it inspired me. In fact, the day it came through was quite empowering for me to hear too. Of like, oh yeah, that book can be a little bit arduous to go through and be with.
I did it though. I did it. I was a good girl.
And praise God, that's a movement in the spirit and passion, dear sister, to actually literally go through the whole thing. Yes. And when we do, I want to share a little secret because it's in our discussion, actually. It's in our discussion in that within it, behind everything arising, there's a greater truth that are we going to necessarily fathom in mental thought and thinking? I don't think so. But we can walk with the faith and the endurance. And in fact, as the messages to the 7 churches really do draw out, if you were to lump that message together as one, in a sense, the call would be to patient endurance. And so in a sense, it's preparing one for the cycle that is to come. But isn't it the perfect portrayal of life here? I mean, like Brother James was speaking. So we can have this intention to hold a deep conscious intention while we are folding the buns, doing our work. All of a sudden, we'll notice mind distracted, turned this way and turned that way. Isn't that the arising of the earth and the heavens falling apart and all of it falling apart? And we can find these, we can turn outside and find everything's just gone to hell in the handbasket. Especially these days. Oh, gosh, you listen to what's happening. I was like, oh, I turned that off really fast. Turn back inward. Let us be. And isn't that Revelations? Literally. But see, we want to notice the threads in it because there are particular threads in the book. For example, well, the one giving the message, the angel of Mashiach, the movement, the uplifting angle of the message to the seven churches and what they are doing in hope, in love, and endurance. Then the movement towards, well, there's this whole one on the throne and these 24 elders that are doing their thing. I was like, where did they come from? And oh, well, it said they're actually robed. I mean, their good deeds are what robe eventually the bride at the end. And then you have the woman of light arising, and you've got the two witnesses arising, judging the nations. You've got and this arising of New Jerusalem. So it's kind of a life lesson, because in our life we have the flashes of that dichotomy happening of all of these things in light continuum. And then we look out into the world, and the third of the world, the earth is getting destroyed, and the trees are getting burnt up, and there's this and there's that. And, But I'm not saying it's easy to read. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's calling to a deep meditation. And that is actually kind of a lifetime of meditation. Meaning, through our lifetime, God willing, we come to hone in on the light continuum that's happening within and behind all of the arisings. So this is very much here, because the way the ways that are described, we will only come to those through this, looking within and behind. That's it. Otherwise, we'll be taken by the surface, turned this way and that. So, you might have to be with it again.
Next year, I'll do it again.
Okay, well, so dear sister, here I have this to share. God willing, we are coming into the feast of the blessed dead. And so this very contemplation you're carrying, you will want to listen to. I appreciate that Brother Christopher has recorded. It's recorded. It is on the YouTube page, and there will be this link sent out. But if you scroll down to the bottom of the YouTube page, you will find Brother Christopher's recording of the death and dying teachings in our lineage. We circled this last year. I would advise you to listen to those a few times. And feel the difference between revelations and these teachings. They do begin to elucidate something that is meant to take you deeper into this. So, I would be there.
Along those lines, I have something to share. And it has to do with my father on his deathbed. And one of the things that happened, I was watching him, and he had his hand up in the air as though someone was holding his hand. And I walked over and put my hand up underneath his hand, and he looked at me very briefly and then looked up above my head again. And I stepped back. It's as though there was someone there, and he continued to hold it up as though there was someone. And I believe that there was a being that was holding his hand at that time.
Dear sister, that point of crossing, that point that gets so vast in the sense of between the physical and dying and spiritual or astral or all these levels. This also plays out sometimes in the birthing process. I think what happens in those moments expresses something of true and pure gesture, like you're speaking, of holding hand being put out. I mean, where did these ever come from? But through these most powerful experiences of souls witnessing as you witnessed, or directly in the midst of life and death, all the way to prophets and apostles who begin to recognize a certain movement in gesture. With the putting out and the hand out and somebody holding hand, I can't help but think of times where I've witnessed movements in ceremony where a holy Zadik literally had hands in different positions that you could sense and sometimes literally envision, see, and know in your being a vast interconnection with, akin to holding hands. So then these moments will reveal some very vast truths of this interaction with hands.
Early on, he also said that he exclaimed, he is alive. So, whatever he was seeing at that time, I think he received a lot of satisfaction in those end days. He was seeing something that perhaps he needed to see all of his life.
I hear that, sister. Mm-hmm. Certainly heard testimonies similar to this. And God's grace that happens in souls sometimes. And like I said, grace. How powerful. Sometimes a life can be lived and everything that we ever needed to come into witness and embodiment can happen in that very flash moment of death. What a mystery. What a profound mystery. We can only witness as you have shared here. Oh, something was happening there. Indeed. Praise God. May his soul be uplifted in this deep remembrance and continuously remember what was revealed and known and shown.
Well, I'm looking to see who else was speaking. I was kind of caught up in the Hebrew letters and of Yad, Y-A-D for hands, Yod, Dalet with Yod meaning hand, and actually you hold your hand this way and kind of separate it from your wrist. It almost can look like a Yod. And Dalet is door. And of course, the Yod is a short form of Yahweh, and it's an expression of God's hands, being willing to receive, going outward, let's say, or being willing to impart. And what you're imparting or receiving, I see the 10 fingers as kind of the 10 Sephirot. They're extending from the hands of God and reaching outward. So it's kind of that's kind of where all this took me, and I just I thought it was kind of fun.
It is very fun, brother. Yes. So first, you're reminding me of a experience many years ago in sacred ceremony with Tal Malachi, where something of the hand of God was being invoked, and I'll never forget it. It was a very powerful movement in the spirit, because could witness this really vast movement of gestures, but the gestures were doing these things of kind of receiving and spinning and moving light power. And I recalled at a certain point, just envision how it started to resonate, was this blessing power of Yod. And because it could be, because of the vast influx of Shefa and Rihaniot of the Holy Sephirot, could be received, the 10. It was as though they could be received in these, the way it played out in the visionary dimension was these rainbow light colors and arrays that then could be moved, and literally watched them come into fingers and the powers being moved in fingers. And I remember later asking, because I was so amazed in the experience of how the blessing power works. Because it was fully received into hands and then moved through hands. And he launched on this discussion of, and it surprised me, actually. I didn't think it would go here, but it did. He launched it on a discussion of the blessing and cursing power of hands. And think about it. That particularly in our culture, I mean, in our walk through a day meditating on people's gestures, and hands literally have this way of blessing or cursing. Either, I mean, we can welcome people, we can, it's intriguing. And so that has to do with because literally in the array of the Sephirot, the Sefer Yitzhara actually goes into this. And in fact, the Sefer Yitzhara, written by Ari Kaplan, goes into a very deep dialogue of the hands as the Sephirot. And in fact, splits the hands, the left and right hand, takes the whole tree, puts them into left and right. It dives somewhere into the, it came up here, the 42-letter name and all of this. I can't say much about that. Don't know much about that. I know it shows up in the Sefer Yitzhara, though. And it's a talking of the, at least with the split of the mercy and severity of hands, of the current that gets created on the tree, when the 10 Sephirot are put into hands versus the tree as it manifests with the middle pillar and the pillar of mercy and severity. It actually takes them and splits them and takes the middle pillar and divides it into these other arrays. It's really intriguing. But it's talking about this manifestation of mercy and severity through hands, hence the blessing and cursing power that plays out through Yod. So, yes, beautiful insight.
Kaplan gets into, he also in that section gets into body movements and gestures as well as just the hands. And I thought it was really interesting, too, that what you just talked about, that there's no middle pillar when you divide all 10 into the fingers. So it kind of, I can't remember exactly how he put it, but it sort of distorts the values of the Sephirot that are in the middle pillar by dividing them into right and left hand. It's a fascinating chapter.
It is, brother. I haven't visited in a long time. And I don't want to misspeak by misquoting how it goes, but I want to say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I would advise to look at that chapter because it takes, we could kind of see we've got Bina, I believe Bina, give her a Malkut Netzach, or Hod Netzach, Bina, give her a Hod Malkut, gets drawn to the left. Hokmah, Hesed, Tiferet, Netzach. So what am I missing here? Help me.
Deat.
But is there 10, not 9? 11? Curious. It's between Tiferet and Yesod, and where they get drawn. I think, yeah. I'm not going to say. We will have to look into that and share that little insight. It is quite interesting, brother. Because it takes the middle pillar and puts it out into these, and that's the manifestation of mercy and judgment. Yes.
I'm hearing a wonderful mystery, Sarah, about the way of the weave and the non-dual that you're kind of incorporating. And I'm hearing other companions speak of this and pointing at it, this way of the weave, which is the way of grace, and which is incorporating all of them, and this non-dual view that seems to weave all these ways in a way that, like the way of grace, there seems to be something speaking of this non-dual approach and how we incorporate all the waves in this weave. So I'm hearing this mystery that you're pointing at, too.
Oh, indeed, brother. And this is beautiful that you would draw this out, because the non-dual and the weave, of course, can't help but go into teachings of Guadalupe and the Spider Woman. She is the full-on primordial woman of the weave, the web. Not karmic web either. Just saying. So, yes, the way of, aren't we, because literally, isn't Yohanan showing a way to incorporate the fullness of your physical being here, now, in your spirituality, fully? How you weave all things into it. And therefore, in this expanse we were talking about, you've got, well, it's the power that binds and the power that liberates. The very power that Yeshua breathes into and shares with the disciples in the upper room on resurrection. It's that very power of what releases and what binds. Mercy and severity. But through that very weave, don't we come into the arising of what is in the middle? I think the whole point of the pulling of these and them being attributed to either side is to point to the arising of what comes in the middle. Because they're weaving this arising in the central channel way, if you will, if that connects to what you're sharing. Something powerful about that. And that's, I would say, that is the very reason we incarnate here. To come into that weave. Because what begins to get carved out is the whole point. But it gets carved out of incarnation. We got to get in to get out. And I'm not meaning that dualistically, because the getting out is the getting in. And there's not really a separation from that. And it's a wild mystery. It comes up in the very idea of current itself, and how positive and negative currents are what drive everything here. How a battery works. How your very car drives down the street. This mystery is in that. So therefore, how we walk around here, it is said, as we're drawing closer to death and dying teachings, we're going to want to look into this. It is said that at the, moment of birth, there is this movement of the white father seed and red mother seed that comes to expand. And all of life happens in that expansion. Just like the pulling apart of the two pillars. This vibration happens. Then, when we die, these come back together as one in the heart. And the meeting of those, But that must somehow happen sometimes in righteous and illumined ones in life, such that the Gospel of Philip says, you must be resurrected before you die. I'm thinking that's a good place to pause. We'll want to literally, I'm serious, keep some of these teachings in mind. And I am going straight to the Sefer Yetzirah when we leave here to look at how those play out. And we'll send an email out there.
Can I just ask one question before?
Yes, please.
You were speaking of weaving, and it reminded me of, because I had a question from Tao's sermon on Sunday, and I couldn't quite figure out how to work in there. Now you're talking about weaving. He mentioned 2 heart tzeddiks, and I got one. I didn't quite catch the other one. Do you know who was that?
Oh, brother. This is good. I have to share, something Tom Malachi revealed on Sunday. We're not sure that that's been ever revealed in public. But because it was, I can speak it. He was sharing the 2 heart tzaddiks for him is Yohanan, of course. Don't we know when we're studying this book, we're studying the deep ways of our Holy Tzaddik. Yes. And Padmasambhava. Because he, he did speak of kind of flip-flopping through Western and Eastern teachings and Kabbalah, Gnosticism, Buddhism, Vajrayana through lifetimes. So yes, for our Holy Tzaddik, he did share these two. So, not to say that we would encourage a full-on study of Buddhism, because we already have a language, and taking on another language could be a little intense, right? Good to stick with one language and really go there. But I would say you probably would enjoy looking into who that is, Padmasambhava.
You know, Tau Sarah, I appreciated him when he shared that with us, because I also have a great love for Yogananda Paramahansa, because he too loved the Christ, right? He also speaks of the Christ stream. He also includes Yeshua in his belief system. Yeshua was one of his heart tzaddiks. So it's like I let a little breath out. I was like, I totally appreciate the dedication to one language, right? And that's actually important. But I was like, oh, it's all right that I also love Paramahansa Yogananda, because he also loves the Christ stream. So I just want to share that.
Indeed, dear sister. Thank you for your sharing. And thank you, Brother James, for drawing this out. It's a good discussion. Yes. The only reason that hasn't so much been widely discussed is, for so long, our Holy Tzaddik has really had this fervence of, no, I need to express this one language in order to not confuse the puppies. Quite literally. But in time, as community grows, and I would consider it quite a auspicious time that what was spoken on Shabbat could be spoken. Quite auspicious, meaning, oh, not so many puppies around these days. Oh, communities, there's quite a few luminous souls who wouldn't be confused. And makes sense, because it's talking about a primordial tradition. And so, yes, opens up to receive. Doesn't this open up to receive a greater portion of one's soul? Because clearly souls have been involved in a myriad of tradition. Yes. So I'm right there with you. It offers a freedom and an opening. Very well spoken, sister. Yes. Okay, and so now I'm running off to look at the Sefer Yetzirah to get that teaching straight. What a blessing. What a delight. So good to be with all of you tonight, indeed. And blessings to you as you walk in your way, moving in your message through the week. Love you very much. Shalom.